Hello and welcome to episode 111 of the Foundry Roundtable. That's right, we're 11-1. But we're also the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. Glad to be back with you from our little summer hiatus. Returning with me from his Siberian exile is Markhawkman.
I wish it was Siberia. Siberia would have been more fun.
And back from hiking the Appalachian Trail, Greendragoon.
You know, hiking is hard work.
I really hope somebody out there gets that joke. But anyway, as we've been gone for the past couple of weeks, we've had some significant things happen. And first and foremost among them is the problem with the 2D map icons has been fixed.
Yay!
I'll have many cheers for that.
I personally tested it, and it works nicely now.
Yes, it does. We're back to normal, or as Casmodian was saying in the chat room a couple weeks ago, we're back to our normal level of broken. So, you know, things like the old colony buildings that, you know, all you can see is the awnings. We're back to that.
I decided to build a colony out of those recently.
Let's see. One of the other new things is, of course, the announcement that they had at Star Trek Las Vegas, which is Season 11, New Dawn, which is coming in October. We don't know a whole lot about it just yet, but some of the things we know is we're getting an all-new part of the story. The Iconian War will be over. We don't know how that ends yet, but I think we have time, based on their release schedule, for one more featured episode before the next season hits, by my calculations. So
yeah, and they
that could be the wrap-up.
Gecko pretty much confirmed that there would be. At the time, he said 2 episodes, but that was before Butterfly
came out. Yeah, obviously we got in the first one. So, but the description of it is that we're going to discover a previously unknown civilization and uncover the mystery of a strange traveler from another time. So
also, they mentioned an enemy that is new to.
An enemy that is what?
I believe it was new to
Star Trek Online.
Ah, gotcha.
Not a cryptic creation, but something we haven't seen in Star Trek Online.
That's always good.
Which matches with that observation you made earlier about the not cool.
Yes. One of the things we'll be exploring later that I skipped over is we have some additions to the Foundry that showed up on Tribble yesterday. So we'll be getting into that in a minute. A couple other things from the new expansion, or not expansion, but Season 11. Although, from what we understand, Season 11 seems to be fairly substantial. Chase Masterson is going to be coming back and doing some more voiceover for us. She's going to be playing her mirror self, Mirror Lita, who is a fleet admiral and probably evil. I'm just going to guess.
Here's hoping we get Emperor Wesley out of the deal.
Well, I've said many times that I was hoping for Captain Kim versus Emperor Wesley. We already have Captain Kim, so we need the other half of that. But anyway, we're also getting a space battle zone in the Badlands. That looks to be fun. I quite like the space battle zones we have so far. So
I can guess where we're going to find Fleet Admiral Lita.
Probably in that battle zone. And then we're also getting the Admiralty system, which we understand to be something like a DOF system for ships. We're going to be getting it's like almost like a trading card game where you get a card for every ship you have in your inventory, and then you send them out on missions of some kind, and you get rewards. So, Dragoon, you've got the trailer for this new season queued up, right?
The Iconian War. So many people. So many ships. So many worlds. Gone. But we fought back. We made the hard choices. We triumphed. Now, it's time to be explorers again. We belong out on the final frontier, making contact with distant worlds and finding a new tomorrow. There's an entire galaxy out there, waiting for us. Remember, Captain, when the technology doesn't yet exist, when the mystery can't be solved, when the odds are unbeatable, that's when they call for Starfleet. Your journey into the final frontier is just beginning.
Well, that is a pretty cool trailer.
I would say so. And it does look like a return to sort of the, almost like a TNG kind of era of being out there seeking out new life and new civilizations.
I get the impression that the Admiralty system is kind of a step towards trying to achieve that. I mean, it's a hard thing to do in an MMO. Because it's...
It is.
One thing I have to wonder about is how much of this exploration is going to be DS9 style, where you go around, you look at things, and maybe the people who you find there decide they don't like you. Oh wait, that happened in TNG too. Never mind.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Well, I mean, the big problem with exploration, as always, is content.
It's how do you make it feel like real exploration? And it's, I don't know,
I mean,
it's very hard.
We know that STO is never going to do that thing that certain other games have done, where the first player to find something gets to name it after themselves. That's not going to happen in STO, because I just can't visualize them having literally thousands of things that are randomly generated.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to go for anything, that procedurally generated kind of a thing. No. Even though, I mean, I'm quite interested in the neat stuff that's coming out of that No Man's Sky game. But who knows how that'll turn out.
I think this is really going to take the form of more featured episodes, which they seem to be happy with, that are focused on, that just take on a more exploratory tone, like checking out news.
One thing that was interesting in the announcement was it said one of 3 storylines. So I'm wondering if maybe we're actually getting back to some faction-based storylines with different missions for each faction. I know that that's very hard to do, especially budget-wise and time-wise, but maybe they are.
Well, it's funny. There was a announcement a little while back, or a debate over in KOTOR about, because they have class-based missions, and at some point they chose to unify those two, just for the simple fact is that they found they couldn't keep up with content.
Yeah, it was a time and budget thing. Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. As always. But anyway, that looks to be out sometime in October. So we will be seeing then, and I assume we will have, of course, many more dev blogs in the meantime.
They've been hitting
go ahead.
Episodes like, every 3 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, pretty close.
So
we'll have one more between now and then. Let's see here. Looking at the calendar.
Yeah, I'd say 5 to 7 weeks from now.
Yeah. Looks like we'll probably have one early September. There might even be room for 2, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, so Dragoon, why don't you click over to Tribble?
Okay.
One of the things we got this week is a Tribble patch with new NPCs for the Foundry. We always love when Zero gets around to adding some NPCs. These are just NPC contacts, not groups. However, you can obviously reskin existing groups as these new people. Now, I was going through, because they weren't all listed exactly, so I was going through and looking for ones that I didn't recognize. And I found some that I don't think were there before, but maybe people will correct me. We'll have Dragoon go through them as soon as he logs over onto Tribble.
I'm working on it.
Another little patch got deployed just today, which resolved an issue with some crashing. They've been working very hard to try and reduce the lag that a lot of people are seeing. Kind of reworking how a lot of powers work on the back end, hopefully without changing their actual functionality as far as the players are concerned. But some of it, of course, they just can't do anything about, because some of it happens in the pipeline between Cryptic and the end user.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of stops on the internet between Cryptic servers and us.
Yes.
There is also that one thing that some people have mentioned, that certain form of lag that seems to be related to stacking powers. And that's one that Cryptic has mentioned that they've been specifically investigating, because it looks like with certain power combinations, it's kind of like a geometrical increase in the amount of calculations in the number of times where the client needs to talk to the server.
Well, that is more technical than I know about.
All right, so I have Tribble's Foundry loaded up.
Excellent. So the first one, the first thing we should go down to is the Iconians. We got many different ones. How many? 12, and 2 versions of one of them, so technically 13. Because we have Tiket, and then we have Tiket after she got owned by the Emperor Kalis.
Ah, yes.
Of course, she gave as good as she got, though.
Well, what was that name that Sutherland was using for that one costume? He managed to figure out how to improvise.
Well, I'll tell you, we were joking around and trying to name the rest of them after devs.
I still think we should name Maria.
So, Jajaf and Maria. Of course, all Iconian names have to be one letter followed by an apostrophe. But in any case, however you want to name them, we have 9 different unnamed ones, and then we have Lemirin, Matara, and Tiket. So you have all kinds of different colors and configurations.
So the one that Sutherland was using has like those 2 rings floating around them that kind of like make an X in front of the chest.
He says it's number 9.
So a funny thing, there was a costume tailor on Ryza. Ryza was Iconian parts.
Really? Which parts?
Like leg attachments and float. Yeah, Iconians.
So you've got them loaded up here.
It's quite the lineup.
All the various Iconians. So all kind of different colors, you know, shades in the glowy bits in the middle. And they float, so if you wanted to actually put some to fight or something, you could probably reskin some Davidians.
Yeah, you could. This one with the pointy feet is kind of weird. Trouble if our anti-grav fails.
Now, initially, they had kind of said, or, you know, I think Trendy had asked about it for us, and they said that I think the plan wasn't going to be that they weren't going to put these in there, that they were going to keep them for cryptic use, but maybe now that the war is ending, they're fine with that.
Yeah.
Because
I think saving them for cryptic use only goes so far, though. I mean, if you're going to give them to us, you might as well give us all of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have Matara in there, even though Matara is technically dead. However, you know, we can keep making Iconian War missions forever, even if the war has ended according to Cryptic, because, of course, that's the other thing. Those discussions were going on today about, you know, time and the passage of time in MMOs, which is very difficult to...
And of course, that there's the fact that you could always just invoke time travel and have the player travel back in time and annoy them before they die.
Certainly can.
And like the Iconian War missions that everyone's already created, I mean, we could just say that they take place in a particular time frame.
Yeah. Just have something up front that says this mission takes place during the Iconian War. That, assuming the player reads it and says, okay, yeah, puts that themselves back into that time frame, says, okay, this is in the past, back during the war. So, in addition to Iconians, we got several new NPCs from the latest missions, starting with Belair. And her mate is in there somewhere, and I cannot remember her name. But I was scrolling through all these earlier, and hopefully I will remember which ones I found. Other guys in the chat room will probably remember Clouda from the recent Butterfly episode, the researcher, who is in a different outfit than she was, or than we saw her in the episode.
Ominous foreshadowing.
Perhaps. We shall see.
Her species isn't really dead.
Let's see, what else?
Got a ominous NPC by the name of Zero.
Ah, yes, way at the end. A very threatening-looking NPC, I must say. Actually, did I say threatening? I meant fabulous.
So what's this one actually like?
She looks pretty much like Zero does in real life.
Here, I'm going to finish listing off the NPCs. I'll get them in and then I'll preview the show.
Yeah. Okay, so we got we have an alternate version of Gaius Selen that you see in an alternate timeline. He is not half assimilated. He's full-on Romulan.
Funny, because we don't actually have the regular version of Gaius.
Yeah, we don't. We do have the assimilated Hakiv, which is very cool. And we have the Emperor Kalis.
Have they added in the time ship yet?
I'm not certain. I will go check that in a minute.
That's interesting.
We have
an armed
and
unarmed.
unarmed.
The first time we've ever had an NPC that came armed.
With the sword of Kalis, no less. So, quick aside, it's something that I remember wondering when I was doing House Peg. Did they ever explain in Stowe, or in the Path to 24/9 or anything like that, they ever explain how he got the sword back? Because last we saw on the TV show, Worf left the sword floating off in wherever.
It's simple. When you play the Facleri Return story arc, Kalis mentions, well, he basically repeats what he told Worf, is that the sword is just a sword, and he personally forges several replicas of it. And of course he gives the player one of them, and I guess he keeps one of them for himself.
I see. Just remembering back to what was it? The first Star Trek Armada game, where one of the missions was you play Worf and you go retrieve the sword of Kalis, the actual sword. Gaius apparently has no hair, assimilated or unassimilated.
Hair is inefficient.
But it's nice that we got the Emperor. Maybe this fits into, I think Pax was going to do some kind of mission where you go back to, like, ancient times, ancient Klingons.
Yeah, this would be good for that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe explain how that Iconian artifact got in the Temple of Kalis. Because apparently it's something that Kalis had kept as a spoil of war or something like that, but they didn't ever say anything about where it came from.
We also got Krenim NPCs. Krenim colony guards. Females and males. Probably the ones that we see on the Kaona colony itself when we visit it.
Yeah, when I was on doing that mission, I noticed they had a really nice variety of NPCs for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got 6 of them.
I think that literally every single person I saw on Keanu actually had a unique appearance.
Sure, they don't have NPC limits quite like we do.
Let's see. What is the next one? We got Researcher Noi as well, as far as Krenim go. So we have 7 Krenim. Now we also have a Ferengi called Oglo, and I can't remember if he's from one of the new episodes or not. He's wearing...
Oglo?
Yeah, he's wearing an Okampa or Talaxian. OGLO.
Oglo. I don't recognize that name.
We have Ramir, who, of course, is the head of House Peg, isn't he?
After not. Oh.
And then one of the other things that I noticed in there is, and I'm not sure if these guys were in there before or not, the Solanogen-based life forms. The Solanae. The actual little guys that do all the clicking noises.
I don't think they were in there before.
Or if they've just gone all this time without us noticing them.
Yeah, it's very possible.
I don't know. Every now and then I just like, on a whim, just like rummage through the asset list.
I do that too.
Right. Get rid of you guys. Apparently I'm super exceeded my...
You're over budget on NPCs. Yeah, but I remember them putting in the ones in the Solana EV suits, but I don't remember these guys. But obviously they made it in at some point. With Zero's usual flair for funny descriptions, the one for the first one is click, click, click. Let's see, past all the Starfleet guys. We have Terrace. Praetor Terrace. She was Praetor, wasn't she?
She was.
Yeah. We have two versions of her. We have one with just sort of a normal Romulan uniform, then one with like extra Solanae looking stuff, I think.
That sounds like that outfit she wore when you find her in the Andromeda Galaxy. Because she had this weird sort of like half armor that she was wearing over her Romulan outfit.
We also have Commander Tamare. And Travana. That's Belair's mate that I was forgetting before, I think. And Tulek is from one of the new episodes. I can't remember which one he is. But we got a bunch of Klingons with some interesting wardrobe outfits, combinations. And I believe that is it.
Are those wardrobes you're talking about like stuff that players have the ability to use, or are unique costume options?
I think they might be replicatable in the Foundry, but not in the regular game. Because as we know, the Foundry has... You can make some more different combinations of things than you can in the regular game. You know, things like different pieces along with the Intel uniforms that you probably couldn't get in-game.
Oh, like the Quietus and the Reaper things?
Yeah, things like that. So, we got a nice bunch of new NPCs to play with. Obviously opening up a lot of different story options with the Iconians and all these different people who are involved in the Iconian War. You were asking earlier if the Krenum time ship has made it in. Let's find out. No Krenum yet. But we do tend to get ships fairly regularly, so I'm assuming that'll be in there eventually. It's like Dragoon is trying to test something out.
Oh, I'm just trying to see...
Oh, you're looking through the ship list.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything I've missed. Check this out.
I did notice that all the command ships are in there, all the pilot ships are in there. I believe the new versions of the veteran ships are also in there. Yeah, you can select a Chimera and then turn it into a Manticore.
Okay. As long as we can do that, we don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like new skins that, since they work with the old skins, you don't really need to do them separately.
You don't need a separate entry.
Hasn't always been true.
Azure Alliance in the chat room is asking if the Intel ships are in, and yes, they are. You can find them in the costume creator. Some of them are listed. A lot of them are listed with the like the name of the faction before them, but some of them are not. Like the Guardian class cruiser is not listed as Fed Guardian class cruiser, but it is in there. Let's see, the Intel ships. Yeah, the Phantom Escort is there, and the... What are the other ones?
Scryer.
The Scryer. Scryer is there.
Eclipse is the third one.
Eclipse is the third one. I had kind of thought about using the Phantom as like one of the little Starfleet ships you see in the Enterprise era, like the non-warp 5 ships. I think you could mess with the materials enough.
One of those little tiny ships you see in the background but never see up close.
So if you wanted to do something in the Enterprise era and not just have a bunch of NX classes by themselves, you could stick some of those in and mess with the materials a little bit. Use like the upgrade material would probably be good for that. What else is in there? All the pilot ships. What was the it was the Excelsior thing that was released recently. What was that?
See, I wonder if the new Akira is in there.
I don't think it is. I was looking at the Akira a second ago and looking at all the various skins, and I don't believe it's in there. The Resolute is the name of the new Excelsior skin. I don't believe that's in there.
Yeah, give him time.
Yeah, those just came out, so... the other one was the Avenger got a new thing, didn't it? Got a new version. Which I do not believe is in there.
Well, one of the things I think about here, though, is how long it took them to actually add a working version of the obelisk.
Yeah, occasionally it takes a while. But the nice thing is that it does happen. We get it eventually. So let's move on.
Sometimes we gotta wait a while, but
yeah, sometimes we gotta wait.
Right.
But ships are the one part that gets updated probably more than anything else. So we should all be pretty happy there. So moving along to let's talk about the new featured episode, Butterfly.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
For anyone who has not played the episode yet.
Turn off now. Skip ahead.
Oh, new featured episode.
Yes, so new featured episode. Sorry, I was just marveling again at your spoiler alert graphic. I still love that graphic.
One of these days I'm going to put sound effects to it.
Yeah. So obviously it starts off with you're going to go help Nog do some simulations on firing the Krenim weapon. Obviously, we knew as soon as we started down the road to building the weapon that we were going to fire it. So, it's nice that they're running simulations first. With some very interesting results, I think. And it was kind of interesting to me how they used the holodeck to sort of show rather than tell the results.
I mean, in the episode of Voyager, they didn't. They just people stared at that console with the wavy lines on it and talked about how they could.
It said, "I've been running a simulation, and it turned out like this."
Yeah. So I think the only visual indication we get...
That was probably a budget thing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Voyager had the budget to actually show it possible.
And they may not have wanted to spend the time on it either.
Yeah. I mean, it was already a two-parter as it was.
Yeah. There's a lot of material in Year of Hell to get through. So you go through, 3 of these simulations. This first one puts you on a bridge of a Defiant class something or other, and the Dominion have invaded, seemingly while you were at war with the Romulans. So obviously they took over. It's like I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a continuation of the first Dominion War or if it was a second.
Well, it could have been
a continuation of the first one. Because one thing that they mentioned in the episode was that in this timeline, the alliance between the Federation Klingons and the Romulans to oppose the Dominion and prevent them from getting a beachhead in the Alpha Quadrant never happened.
Yeah.
But it's possible that the war didn't play out the same way, so maybe the war didn't get started as quickly in this timeline, but hard to say.
Well, it could also be it was a continuation of the incident with the 2800.
That's also possible.
That would explain the huge gap between the first Dominion War and this.
Because, of course, with the Krenim weapon, it's not like you don't travel through time. It's you erase something else from time, and you experience the changes at your present time. So what you're seeing is still 4 years after Voyager, or 36 or however much.
Yeah, about 30 years.
Yeah, something like that. What's the next one? The next one is you see that you prevented Voyager from awakening the Vaadwaur. So without that those attacks to rally around, you're not successful in forming that Delta Alliance among all those different species. Also in that
timeline, they also had it so that the hierarchy became an Iconian servitor race instead of the Vaadwaur.
Which seems to be worse, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the Vaadwaur were a pretty direct foe, so the Alliance could oppose them directly, but yeah. Hierarchy, they just undermined everyone.
Yes. They're sneaky that way.
Which is kind of what they did in Voyager. The few episodes that showed up.
Yeah, it is kind of. I was just watching one of those not too long ago. It's the one where Voyager falls into the empty realm of space or something and can't get out without cooperating with everybody else. And of course, there's a hierarchy ship in there, and didn't really play nice.
Funny, because they're almost kind of played the comic relief.
A little bit, yeah. And so the third one you go to is where you keep the Yamato from discovering the Iconian tech in the first place, which delays everything. And when you the changes to your time is that Romulus is still there, because of course it was all contact with the Iconians that led to the destruction of Romulus. So the Star Empire is still there and stronger. However, Detan is starting his rebellion anyway. The only problem here is that although there's no Iconian war, the Borg are worse. Yes. However, that seems acceptable.
Well, I mean, in the simulation, they're just talking about Borg problems on the borders.
Yeah. And so that seems acceptable. And so, and here's sort of my only quibble with this episode, particularly, is that you jump right from that simulation to, oh well, let's try it. Now that may be sort of a conceit you have to do in the game because really it would take months and months and months and months and months of testing.
My assumption at this point, my assumption at this point is that those were the three most promising scenarios that the researchers had come up with out of several hundred.
Yeah. And I think it's a case of, let's just say for the moment that Cryptic decided to increase the amount of time between your testing and the actual pulling the trigger is like during that time. Hey, what would you have the player do?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get around. I admit. But I don't know. Maybe you could split it up. You could have put some of that testing in the previous episode, and so it feels like a longer process because they're working on it in the previous episode. And you could have participated in some of that then, and then
one other idea I thought of was that maybe having one of them mention that they have a database in one of the computers that you can look through of with summaries only of a variety of things that they tried and concluded were bad ideas.
I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to have seen something that pressed them into executing the weapon versus just saying, okay, this looks like the best, let's go do it. Maybe something like the Iconians discovering the facility, forcing them to flee.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that would have screwed up their ending, you ending up back at the facility, but
it would have.
It would have also.
Like I said, it's a hard thing to get around, so I don't really criticize them for that. So, because I don't really know the perfect way to do it either. So
yeah, I think if I were doing, I would have ratcheted up the urgency to force them into firing the weapon. Because then it kind of accounts for the some of the complaints that players have had about they don't like the idea of using the weapon. Yeah, but if you're about ready to get blown up by Iconians, you might think twice or think about it differently.
Yeah. Now we have been told in dialogue and in the lore blogs that this is a very devastating war. There's attacks going on everywhere. We're essentially losing. So I think that provides at least part of that ticking clock, but it not quite enough in this particular episode.
It's a general ticking clock. It's not an immediate ticking clock.
Yes. Something we've been trying to help with our big Foundry anthology of showing those attacks throughout the quadrant or several quadrants. So you get out there and Nog's in charge of the ship, and you and Lisette go out and try it. Get rid of an asteroid?
Yeah, you destroy an asteroid, which I assume alters something else to get something to impact an archaeological site where Yamato found evidence of the Iconians.
Yeah. And so you, the first thing you do, because you know from your simulations that affected Romulus itself, so you go there to take a look, and oh my god, it's been assimilated.
Org.
I hope you brought hazard emitters because you're going to need it.
Or frequency modulators, for sure.
Yeah. The first character I went through was...
I had my Talaxian character dispense stabity death.
My first character wasn't so well equipped for Borg, and I think I had to go equip some modulators on her. But the second time I took my main through, he was all wearing like Mako gear, and so he didn't have too much trouble with the Borg.
I'm always equipped for stabby death, so I don't need to worry about that.
I did not happen to have any melee weapons on me, but I did have enough frequency remodulators. But I don't know. I thought it was it was a neat surprise to suddenly, it wasn't necessarily a surprise that it was going to go horribly wrong.
I think we were all expecting it to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, I think we were all expecting that. But I think it was a surprise to find, to get back to Romulus and find it's been assimilated. Because, that's not what the simulation had predicted. And so you go down to the surface and you find, because you're looking for data to find out what the heck went wrong, and you find out it was assimilated like 20 years ago.
Which is a little weird because, so our best guess, the simulation we viewed could have only been a few months ago, like a year ago, because maybe 2 at most, because it kind of refers to events. I mean, the Titan forming would have been about a year or 2 ago from our present time.
Sure.
So 20 years ago is a drastic departure.
It is. But it also kind of illustrates the difficulty in trying to predict what will happen when you remove one single thing from time.
Well, remember what one of Anorax's incursions did? It actually completely removed the Krynim from existence as a galactic power and reverted them to a pre-warp civilization that never left their homeworld.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was kind of a funny thing because the dialogue in that episode implied that this was a byproduct of Voyager's temporal shielding. Like it somehow reacted with the cascading wave.
Well, there was that one, and then there was it was like one of his very first incursions. Reduced the Krynim Imperium a ton, and he spent the whole time trying to get him back to 100%.
Yeah, he said the first incursion went wrong because he
didn't fully understand what the weapon would do.
Well,
that was the basic gist of it.
Yeah, there was a disease that the species he erased had introduced an antibody.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I thought of when I was pondering this is that it's possible that Voyager's temporal shielding, the reason why that threw off his calculations is because it prevented him from properly focusing the weapon. Because, I mean, you got to figure, so something like that would need to have a ridiculous amount of precision in order to work, and not just push random objects to random times.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then maybe it's because one of the things that's touched on here is that they put all the information about everything that they're doing into a computer and shield it temporarily, so any changes won't affect it. So they can go back and see, okay, this is what we did. This was the effects, or what we can figure out anyway. So maybe having that thing, this temporarily shielded out there, affected the time incursion.
Oh, well, keep in mind, it's not just the core. It's the time ship itself, plus the Lisette and the player ship are all temporally shielded.
In theory, if you know about the existence of all these temporally shielded objects, you can compensate for that. I mean, because remember, Anorax did not have just his time ship that was temporally shielded. He had a bunch of things inside the time ship that were individually temporally shielded.
True.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would assume that it's possible that, because I mean, what it talks about in dialogue, one of the issues that we are having is recreating the temporal shielding. So it's possible that our temporal shielding is flawed, and the weapon just doesn't accommodate for it.
That's possible.
It's also that possible that it's just simply a fact that our predictive algorithms weren't very good, and what we saw was not an accurate depiction of what became.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Anorax's own predictive algorithms did not give him accurate results either. I mean, because every single time he came up with something, it always seemed to come out worse than he was expecting it to.
Refresh my memory. What season was the Iconia episode of TNG?
Contagion is the name of it. I believe it's season 2.
Okay. So it takes place around the same time as they're doing their whole early build-up to the Borg.
Yes.
Is it possible that the non-discovery of Iconia may have caused some complacency, or should not to quite realize the Borg threat quite as soon?
Actually, I just thought of a very specific possibility.
Okay.
It's maybe one thing that happened is that due to not encountering the Iconian computer virus, maybe Starfleet's ships lacks a critical defense against being attacked by Borg computer viruses.
Of course, we don't know what's happening with the Federation or the Klingons in this timeline.
Yeah, we don't.
We don't get to find that out. So we don't know if there's any specific reason why the Borg invasion was not fought off by, an alliance of Beta Quadrant powers, which seems to be what's happened in our timeline. The regular Stowe timeline with things like all the STFs.
Well, that's actually a really good point. With the Romulan Star Empire still there as a major power, it could have prevented the formation of the Omega Force.
Maybe that's possible.
So, having Romulan Star Empire there kind of prevented or stunted the growth of the Romulan Republic. There was never any official formation or kind of a on the side alliance for this to fight the Borg, and as a result,
we were too busy fighting them.
Yeah,
fighting the Romulans. But in any case, obviously something went wrong, and you have to try and figure out how to fix it. And you come up with removing the transwarp hub from time as the way to fix it.
Now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't horribly confused, and I actually went back and played it a second time to try and make sense of what exactly they were rationalizing to cause a reset.
Did you come up with something?
No. The second time I finally clearly heard that they were trying to target the transwarp hub. But would firing the weapon at the transwarp gate destroy the hub?
My thought was that, one, they were firing the weapon beam through an open transwarp gate.
Okay.
And hitting something on the other side of it. The other is that they weren't trying to reset things. They were just trying to somehow create a universe where the Borg weren't covering everything.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, it's a last-ditch effort before the the Borg take the time ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. One
have
thing
time
that they
to
mentioned in
simulate
that
it out.
episode is that they were expecting to face endless waves of Borg reinforcements if they didn't do something immediately.
So I actually tried that out. I kept finding Borg, and yeah, they keep showing up. Because nothing happens until you transmitted the data. So you can just sit there and fight Borg if you want.
Mm-hmm. But you get back to essentially what seems like your time. Unfortunately, it's not exactly your time, or your original timeline. There are differences, including a whole race of people essentially gone from time, which is researcher Clouda, who we referred to earlier. She's in the Foundry now. So she hasn't been completely erased from time. She's still in the Foundry.
Well, one thing that's an important note about this is that their explanation for why the Tutarians are gone is not that the Tutarian race ceased to exist, but that the Tutarians in this timeline were unable to defeat a Borg incursion, and thus got the majority. They became desperate and started experimenting with recovered Solanae technology, and apparently killed themselves in the process.
Yeah.
Apparently.
But it's very interesting from a character standpoint, because now you have that researcher Noi, who was married to one and doesn't remember her. Even though, of course, you met them at the beginning of the episode.
That's, of course, technically your character doesn't remember him either.
Technically. This is one of those rare instances where the what the player knows and what the captain knows differ.
Well, I mean, that actually happens a lot because the player will usually have a pretty strong knowledge of Star Trek as a whole, where the character may not.
No, that's true. But it does open up
Yeah.
some possibilities for what else has changed.
Yeah. Players may or may not be genre savvy.
So I found I've been trying to kind of process this, how things returned back to the way they were, and I've been doing a little math, and Romulus is supposedly captured 20 years ago. So that would be 24. It's 2410 now. So that is 2390-ish. So in the case of this altered reality, or I was looking up the destruction of Romulus, which is supposed to take place in 2387.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have altered the altered when Romulus was destroyed. All we did was erase the Borg presence.
Well, one thing that I was kind of pondering with this myself is what if the it's like I said, it's one of those ripple effect things. What if one of the things that happened here is that it prevented the Borg from initiating first contact with Zephram Cochrane?
I'm not sure. That's kind of outside of the scope.
Well, it's part of that whole butterfly effect thing. You wipe out part of the Borg transwarp network, and then what happens?
Well,
Very convoluted chain of events, but
But did it wipe out their transwarp capability, or did it wipe out something on the other side of that?
My interpretation was that it took out part of the transwarp network, but not the entire thing. But that's more guess.
Well, they have more than one transwarp hub.
At the time of Voyager, what was it? They had 6?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. It was a very low number, but obviously more than one. But I know it could be a thing where it got rid of part of the transwarp hub as if it had never existed.
Well, it's possible that the Borg's incursions into Romulan space are what actually stopped the Iconians from destroying Romulus. It's like, why do we blow it up if it's just going to be assimilated here anyways? And then when that failed to, or they prevented that from happening, then they went back to their plan and destroyed it.
Mm-hmm. But at the end of the episode, you're left sort of right back where you started, which is you don't have a good target to achieve the goals that you want with this temporal weapon.
Yeah, and they're starting to make the noises of maybe the weapon isn't the way to beat the Iconians.
Mm-hmm.
So, that said, I mean, given how much time has been put into developing this arc of the story, it would be kind of suck if it didn't play some part in the finale. I mean, especially because they could have, if they really wanted to, they could have just done what they did in Voyager and done like a complete reset.
The reset button.
Well, one thing that I found amusing here is maybe they're going to take the hardware they built into the weapon and use it in a manner that is not consistent with the way Anorak's meant for it to be used. Like maybe using it to push things backwards through time or something like that.
I don't know, but obviously we're going to have to figure out something. Something's got to work to get rid of these Iconians.
I've got to wonder now, because they fired the weapon the first time, does this mean that the episode Contagion didn't happen? NG now?
Possibly.
It's possible. It's also possible that whatever they fired at reset it and put that asteroid back where it was.
Or it shifted things enough that it caused it to miss its target.
Yeah. Because obviously you still, the Krenim Research Station is still there. You still built it. You still had to build it because of the Iconian War. And the other thing that I noticed in that trailer for season 11 is that they still talk about, how, we lost so many ships and so many people. So I don't think we're going to erase the war entirely.
No, like I said, I don't think the solution will be an outright alter the timeline. But I think I would love to see the final solution involve the time ship, but not in the way that we would traditionally think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually starting to wonder if maybe their solution is going to be something that plays off what Sela was talking about, where if you push the Iconians through time, it causes them to forget who they are now and remember themselves the way they were then.
Oh, I definitely think that's going to be a key. I mean, they would not have dropped that tidbit and reminded us. Because, I mean, if you talk to
Nog.
Temporal, I was going to say you talk to the Temporal, was it Nog or the Temporal agent?
Nog tells you about Deathlands. Yeah. He explains it in more detail than Sela did.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they're reminding us of that fact because they're setting it up for the finale.
That would be my guess.
Also, you remember that one set of pictures from the wise sages, as they're often called? which, well, they showed pictures of what appeared to be the past. So, maybe we'll get to see that particular past.
Well, we shall see.
And of course, we've got the hanging thread of who is the other.
Yes, who is the other? I was looking around on the forums today, and there was a thread about that, and it was everybody from Q to Future Guy to just speculating about pretty much everybody.
Yeah, no one has a foggy clue.
Nobody has a clue.
The game for us to actually guess.
Well, it's a funny thing because another note was that what was her name? Toyota's wife.
Clouda?
Clouda. It was people were kind of speculating on the fact that Clouda looks very similar to one of the sphere builders.
Yes, indeed.
And I double checked, and the ears are different, so it's not exactly the same, but still, I mean, it's an interesting thought.
It is, and I remarked on that when I was first playing the mission, and it's been a big topic of discussion.
Well, the thing about this that's most interesting to me is that they created a new character model for Clouda. And that suggests to me that they're planning on using more members of that race in the future.
Oh, if you want me to throw even more fuel on the fire, they said that Clouda's race destroyed themselves experimenting with Solanae technology, which we know what happened to the Solanae with a catastrophic failure.
So they got trapped in subspace or something like that.
Or they had to retreat into subspace. So what if something similar happened to her race, and maybe instead of getting trapped in subspace, they had to retreat into whatever it is they reside.
Some kind of temporal thingamajig.
Yeah.
When they showed the realm of the sphere builders in Star Trek Enterprise, it seemed to be like this featureless white void.
Yeah, I'm sure that was savings
like
money.
What you would expect for a subspace domain. Because, if I remember right, the subspace domain that the Solanae lived in was almost like a black void or something, wasn't it?
Something like that. You very rarely got a glimpse of it.
They were just called trans-dimensional beings.
Yeah.
But it would imply some kind of pocket similar to subspace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. Actually, remember the episode with the Solanae and TNG. They mentioned that the Solanae were able to locate the Enterprise due to a specific set of modifications that Geordi had made trying to improve the efficiency of the ship's systems, which was causing it to create, I guess you could say, a beacon in subspace that, for the Alpha Quadrant powers, the ability to track that subspace energy signature was of little consequence. But for a race of beings who don't live in normal space, that was a big deal because it was kind of like a shark fin sticking out of the water.
So I'm going to say I'm actually feeling so confident about this. I think we just solved the mystery of season 11 of who the new race is, and that it has to do with time travel. I think the new race is the Sphere Builders.
Temporal Cold War Part 2.
Pretty much.
Well, or as I put in my missions, the theory that basically everything you've ever experienced in Star Trek is the Temporal Cold War.
Why not? I mean, I always kind of felt that the
behind the scenes manipulations,
Well,
causing things like the Dominion War and stuff like that.
That particular theory has a lot of merit when you consider that we know that the Temporal Cold War goes all the way into the 26th century, and it started before the Federation even existed.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny that the Sphere Builders should possibly show up in this episode, because that's where I was going with my Iconian War series of Foundry missions. I was going to have you discover a sphere left over from when they all got supposedly destroyed in Enterprise. And say that there was one left over, because I figure that the Sphere Builders, because they have that time travel component to themselves, would be sort of natural enemies of the Iconians.
Well, one aspect I just thought of about the Enterprise episode where they take out the Expanse is that they never actually say that the spheres were destroyed. T'Pol simply states that they're disabled, which of course means they're no longer generating the Expanse.
Well, they show them kind of collapse in on themselves.
Yeah.
Well,
and they show it like a chain reaction. But yeah, I mean, my theory would be that at least one survived and was still there.
Well, given the number of them that they showed to exist in Enterprise, there could be a dozen of them out there still.
Could be, for all we know.
The way they worked seemed to... Each of them had a short-range effect. It could manipulate space around it for only a limited distance. But when you put a huge network of them together, all of a sudden you have a huge field that they were throwing out. Also, there was one of the, I guess you could say, unsolved temporal paradoxes of Star Trek Enterprise. Why is it that the Expanse exists in the 26th century and Archer's time, but not the 24th century?
Well, because I think what you see in the 24th century is the timeline where they, that you see eventually end up with an Enterprise where they destroy the spheres and get rid of the Expanse. The one that Daniels shows Archer is a possible future, I think.
Or an earlier version of the future.
An earlier version of the future. Which makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yes, temporal mechanics is hard.
Temporal mechanics.
Well, one thought that I had come up with is maybe the Sphere Builders built more than one set of spheres.
That's very possible.
Well, they had to get the first set of spheres in there somehow.
I mean, it's like with the Death Star. Why build only one when you can build two? I mean, it's not like you destroyed the blueprints after you built the first one, right?
Well, I mean, it's a great opportunity for Stowe because they can... I wonder if they could almost do their own version of the Expanse. And then have that sort of be the exploration, because it's well outside the range of the primary powers, like in some new part of the galaxy. And so we get to dig in and go through this, and then eventually unravel the history that the Sphere Builders are basically coming back, or attempting again to enter our realm.
Actually, if I remember right, the Expanse was kind of like northwest of Earth. When you look at the galaxy map itself.
It is never actually given a specific location.
All that you're told is that it takes about 3 months at Warp 5 to get there.
It's a decent distance, because what, did it take them 3 days to get to Kronos?
Yeah. Not that there's ever any sort of consistent distances used in Star Trek.
Well, we do know a few things, though, is that apparently the Boslicks had frequented that region of space, or at least visited it regularly. Because I saw Boslick traders in that region. I'm trying to remember the other races. Oh, we also saw the Qatarians in that region. But yeah, we don't know exactly where they live either. So
So Pax is asking, how are the Xindi still around when the Expanse collapsed? The Expanse itself didn't collapse. The Expanse was just an area of space.
Yeah,
The spheres collapsed, and that would probably dissipate the thermobaric clouds around it.
it
So it
wasn't
just become normal
thermobaric
space.
clouds, though. Is that the structure of space-time inside the Expanse was different than normal space.
yeah,
It
you
was
had the
more
anomalies.
turbulent.
Yeah, because of the spheres.
In one episode, they show Archer sitting in his quarters, writing a log, and then all of a sudden his coffee cup starts floating up into the air.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff like that.
Basically, what they said was when the sphere network collapsed, the Expanse reverted back to normal space.
So all throughout, TOS and TNG time, that's just been normal space. And a lot of it, I'm guessing, is Federation territory now. Probably not all of it, but some of it. Especially because the Xindi are members of the Federation now.
No, we don't know exactly where they finally settled down. They were still in the looking for a homeworld stage. And that was one of the things, was that supposedly Earth was supposed to help them find a homeworld.
Mm-hmm. I actually, in my missions...
They did have that. They did have at least one planet that was not necessarily a homeworld, but a major colony world, because we saw that one planet with Xindi Aquatics built the sphere weapon. I mean, it was a surface shipyard, so they obviously had to have put a lot of time and effort into building structures on that planet. So even if it's not a homeworld, it's definitely a permanent base of operations.
That was one of the things that because my latest mission, my Iconian War mission, included the Xindi, because we were in that region of space. And I don't remember if I actually put this in, but at least in my head, if I didn't actually write in dialogue, I had it that each of the different races of Xindi moved out and colonized their own worlds. And from there, even colonized several, made several colonies. Now that the Expanse was gone, all of the conflicts that they were embroiled in were no longer, they were no longer enemies with Earth, anything like that. So they were free to sort of reestablish themselves in peace. That was my theory, anyway.
Yeah.
But I may have to, depending on if Cryptic is actually doing something with Spear Builders, I may have to change what I was going to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, after we've kind of talked through it, I'm actually really confident about it now. But we'll see. We'll see if we're right.
Mm-hmm.
If Greendragoon is wrong, obviously we will have to come up with some sort of punishment. But we'll think about that. However,
what if I get it if I'm right?
Respect.
I'll give you a stack of 3 contraband.
There you go. That's valuable. Good prize. So one of the things that this mission Butterfly did do is give me some ideas. So Dragoon, you were wanting to do a mission building contest for the Foundry Roundtable, an official roundtable contest.
Yes.
Obviously, we need some kind of topic to have people build their missions off of.
Well,
Correct?
I mean, my initial goal kind of with it was to try and populate some of the empty systems that we have around the galaxy, kind of make it more of a... give more people more chances to go out and just find new missions.
Sure. But I kind of came up with a story topic as well, based on this mission, which is to set a mission in one of these alternate timelines that is described in this episode. And there are 4 main timelines, or sort of 5 actually, that I wrote down when I did a second playthrough here. So the very first timeline that you are told about is when you just use the weapon to eliminate the Iconians from time. And this delays the development of warp technology in the Alpha Quadrant, and eventually the Day Ones rise to power, but they are beaten and conquered by Vulcans who never embrace logic and enslave everyone else. And these violent Vulcans are involved in a really horrible war with the Dominion. So that could be set the stage for a very interesting Foundry mission.
Okay.
The second one is where you remove a specific sequence of stars and cause a rogue planet to enter the Iconian system. So the Iconians have to deal with that instead of the war that drove them into hiding. And so instead of a warlike, vengeful people, they evolve as a peaceful people. But unfortunately, this results in the one that you see where the Dominion is attacking Earth, because Earth had been in war with the Romulans, because the Federation had tried to help the Klingons, who were tearing themselves apart in the Civil War. As a consequence, the Dominion attacked, and they took Beta Z, took Tellar Prime. Vulcan was rendered uninhabitable, and they're already at Earth. So I don't know. You could do something there with, maybe showing the Federation guerrilla resistance.
One interesting aspect of that particular one is that it would be interesting to see what sort of changes to the Dominion's side of the Force is, because in that timeline there was no barricade at the wormhole. It's possible that the Dominion didn't even bother looking for allies in that timeline because they had nothing to impede their progress. I mean, maybe in that timeline, the Cardassian and the Breen were allies of the Federation in their attempts to stop the Dominion invasion at one point.
It's possible.
I hate to think what happened to the Bajorans.
I mean, because in the original timeline, the only reason why the combined forces of the Romulans, Klingons, and the Federation actually were able to stop the Dominion is by barricading the wormhole. If they failed at that, then the Dominion War in the TV show would have gone very differently, because, the 4800 ship thing, that would have been at the beginning of the war, not at the end.
Well, it definitely opens up a lot of interesting things to explore. The third alternate timeline is where you prevent Voyager from going into underspace and awakening the Vaadwaur. So this results in the Iconians, as we talked about before, using the hierarchy instead, and you're not able to effectively put together the Delta Alliance. So you could figure out what are the consequences of that.
I don't know. Do you think it could have resulted in the Iconians never actually attacking en masse?
It's possible.
Because they achieved greater success through their servitors?
That's very... I won't say what all the things you could do with this, because there could be many, and there could be better ideas. Let's see. The fourth timeline is where you keep the Yamato from discovering Iconian tech. Now, in the simulation, it has Romulus still there, the Star Empire is stronger, but Datan and his rebellion are forming anyway, and there's no Iconians going on. But you do have Borg at the edge of Romulan space. And the fifth timeline is where you do that, but obviously it's the one you actually experience where Romulus has been assimilated. Now, how you get to these because these are just theoretical alternate timelines in the mission, except for the one that you actually experience. How you get to them would be up to you, up to the person doing the challenge. You could just say, okay, now we're in this one, and that's just how it is. Or you could...
here's a random rift into a parallel reality.
Yeah.
I mean, because one thing that was hinted at in the TV show is, in certain episodes, is that there are ridiculous numbers of parallel universes. There's actually one episode of Deep Space Nine where their conclusion as to why a certain phenomenon was happening on board Deep Space Nine is that in an alternate reality, a badly damaged Romulan warbird was orbiting the station, and every time it came within a certain distance of the station, it would trigger certain things to happen. And that was a Romulan ship in a parallel universe causing stuff to go wrong. Weirdest explanation for random events that I've seen in the Star Trek episode, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, we've encountered seemingly random temporal rifts before. I mean, the whole thing with yesterday's Enterprise.
Or
There's
Parallels.
no explanation for where that thing came from.
Got the episode Parallels, which was all about exploring possibilities.
Exactly.
Actually, yesterday's Enterprise, the temporal rift did actually have a cause.
Oh, that's right. It was like the weapons fire from the battle or something like that.
If I remember right, what happened was when it was created when one of the ships in the battle had a warp core breach and it exploded, it opened a temporal rift that the Enterprise C got pushed through.
But yeah, I would leave the cause of you being in this other timeline up to the individual author. So what do you think? What do you think that'd be a viable topic?
Oh, that's a good community question. You guys think?
Yeah, and that's why I want to do this on the air, so let people ponder it and think about it. Obviously, we haven't officially announced that we're doing this challenge just yet, or put out any deadlines, so people can just think about it for now. And if you have a better topic,
nice to wait a while, even if the only reason for waiting is to attempt to get official support. Because if this could get made into an official Foundry challenge, that would be awesome.
That'd be fun. If it isn't, we'll definitely come up with some good prizes.
Jorgen here is better at winning lockbox ships than I am.
Sometimes. Can't tell you how many times I've failed to win a Ferengi Marauder.
Well, then they give you a free Ferengi ship.
I did win a Krenim Time ship, though. So
I just thought of the fact that I only actually have one lockbox ship, and that lockbox ship is something that I bought on the exchange.
Yeah,
oh wait, technically, I did actually win Mirror Universe ships from one of the lockboxes, but those weren't exactly the good prize. They was kind of like the consolation prize almost.
So anyway, why don't we move it along? Obviously, we've had a 2-week break here, so why don't we go around and tell what we've been doing in this 2-week break, Foundry or otherwise. So, Dragoon, what have you been up to?
Mostly I've been on vacation. This last week. It was good. I needed a break. But
Did you
with
do anything fun?
Got out of town. Went and hung out of the lake in the middle of nowhere. Played the featured episode on Crummy Internet. But before that, I actually did. I have been working on the Foundry, and on part 3, no less.
Hey, all right.
I had hinted before. I had been working with those colony buildings, ones you can't see except for the awnings, because I've been trying to build a refugee colony. I'm actually building it on the old Hobus ground map, which I know you're familiar with, because it has that cool dome above it.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of that dome.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it enough so it kind of has that city feel, but I was sticking with the colony buildings. So I kind of felt that they had that sort of run-down refugee feeling to it. Like this is the place where...
Did the Hobus ground map comes with a bunch of baked-in assets that look kind of sort of like you would have for a refugee colony?
Well, at the moment, I'm actually kind of building above those. So I have, since it's all paved and stuff,
I've actually been thinking about making a mission involving Akamarians, and it just occurred to me that the Gatherer colony worlds had a very similar decor to the Hobus ground map.
I'm sure they, in the one where they, had a phaser fight?
No. The Federation guys were using phasers. The Akamarians were using some kind of beam weapon that was inferior to phasers. It was a directed-energy weapon, but it had like a quarter of the power of a decent phaser.
In those earlier episodes, TNG liked to do phaser fights more. So they...
Yeah, I forget whether it was a bright blue or a bright red energy beam, but, you know, they actually had enough power to kill people, but they didn't have as much power as a phaser, apparently.
Anyway, that's what I want. It's not quite ready for screenshots yet, but when it is, I'll probably post it to you.
Sounds good. Mark, what have you been up to during our hiatus?
I finally finished my mission Otha Patrol, and I published it.
Hey, all right.
Yay!
You may or may not remember, but Otha Patrol's theme is basically you go to the Otha system because something out of the ordinary has happened there. Namely that some of the Borg in the Otha ground war zone cobbled together a ship and escaped. So you have to go track them down. And, well, I'm not going to spoil the ending, so you're going to have to play it and find out what happens then. Oh, by the way, it's a KDF mission. And bring a bat lift. You're going to need it.
Dragoon, you should come up with some kind of little party graphic or something for whenever one of us publishes a mission, because it happens kind of rarely. With the three of us. Not never, but rarely. I have been pretty busy with work, unfortunately. That was part of the reason why we took a 2-week break instead of just the 1 week that you were on vacations, because the week before I was, if anybody doesn't know out there, I'm a newspaper reporter and editor, and I was covering a professional bull riding event 2 Wednesdays ago. So that's what I've been doing is working a lot, and been doing some writing on a part 2 of my Iconian War series, the one that I might have to change the ending of, depending on if Cryptic does anything with the sphere builders. But I've been kind of exploring the notion of poor leadership, because I've been recently learning a lot about the Revolutionary War and World War I, and you know, all of the really, really bad generals that were somehow in charge, and all of the horrible mistakes they made and all the lives that got lost because of them. So I'm going to put a really bad admiral in my next mission. Well, somebody who should not be in charge in wartime.
That reminds me of when I read about Erwin Rommel, because, you know, the only reason why he didn't get fired at the start of the war was the fact that he was the best general that they had. And so when they were going around appointing people to positions based on political convenience, they didn't appoint anyone to his position because they knew that something disastrous would happen if they tried to replace him with an idiot.
Oh, yeah. And it was worse in World War I, because you had all these people who were, you know, it was the aristocracy was the only people allowed to be generals. and
well,
none of them were any good.
Was actually where Erwin Rommel came from. Is that he was a low-ranked soldier in World War I who managed to earn his way into a general position.
Yeah. But in any case, in my mission there, you're going to have this really this admiral who's the line from one of his subordinates is he was a really good administrator in peacetime, and now we're thrust into a war, and he's just not good at it. He's not making good decisions. He's not counterattacking when he should be, and things like that. And so you're going to clash with him, and in combat situations, and tempers are going to flare. And so I asked on Twitter yesterday, what do people think of when you get to a situation where he gives you an order that is pretty bad, and is going to cost lives, civilian lives even, and you, as the player, disobey that order? Do your bridge officers support you?
I remember this discussion, and I think I told you to put it through the TNG test. That if this was the crew of the Enterprise D, how would they handle it?
As Data said at one point in time, to hell with our orders, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the bridge officers are kind of an extension of the player, in that they're created by the player.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to assume that they are generally loyal to the captain. Or player.
Yeah. And it's going to be fairly obvious that you're in the right in what you're doing, so that it's not going to be an ambiguous thing where the player is going to look back after that and say, "No, my bridge officer should have stood up to me and relieved my sorry self because I was disobeying orders."
This reminds me of the many interesting discussions we've had on the forum about the morality of Star Trek Insurrection, and of course the comparisons with that one episode of TNG that had a similar premise, seen from the opposite point of view. Because in the TNG episode, it was a group of people that should have left their planet because the Federation treaty with the Cardassians gave the planet to the Cardassians. But they decided they didn't want to leave the planet, and eventually they made a new agreement with the Cardassians so that they became Cardassian citizens, even though they're all humans.
That ended really well.
I'm certainly not claiming that this hasn't been done before. This is definitely a plot that has been done before, and I definitely want to have moments like if you guys have seen Crimson Tide, where you got some of, and this is going to happen on Starbase, where you got some of the Starbase personnel are loyal to the Admiral, some are with you, and you're going to have a confrontation. And all of this, of course, during wartime, which is really the worst place for it to happen. And so, of course, that makes it the best place for it to happen. Story-wise.
It reminds me, what you just said there reminded me of the scene in Deep Space Nine where Worf and Martok are discussing military strategy. Wait, it wasn't Martok, it was Gowron. It was Gowron, not Martok. Worf and Gowron were discussing military strategy, and some random numbskull comes up and challenges Gowron for the right to lead the Klingon Empire.
Yeah. And
Worf's like, we don't have time to do this right now. And Gowron's like, you know what, you're right. Then just stabs the challenger in the heart and kicks him to the side. Like, okay, now we can get back to what we were doing.
This would be more like a Federation spin on that. So less stabbing, more pointing of phasers and making threats.
Okay, so you need to work in the line. I believe the correct response is to hell with our orders. Although I don't think
is
you can
hell
actually
caught by the profanity filter.
It might be. So you might have to paraphrase.
I don't know. We haven't seen that particular word get filtered on the forums, even though the current forum word filter has certain rather insane things that it filters. Ooh, here, let me test it.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I could just substitute Grethor for it. Say 2 Grethor with our orders. Because the it doesn't filter out Klingon.
Now, it might seem a little weird that your random bridge officer is using Klingon, but
But you know me, I always love to.
What do you see in Zone Chat?
What was that, Mark?
What do you see in Zone Chat for the asteroid mine?
I never have Zone Chat on. That's just asking for it.
yeah.
Pax says hell is not filtered in the Foundry editor.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is that I just typed that phrase into Zone Chat.
There you go.
That's good because you could also use the Spock line, which is if I were human, I believe my response would be go to hell.
Actually, I think they may have specifically removed that recently because they decided to add an item to the game named Year of Hell Lockbox.
That's a good point.
But in any case, my actual time in the Foundry has been used working on the latest Starbase UGC project, so mostly map building there and getting ready to do a lot of scripting with that. But fortunately, my episode is a very action-heavy climax episode, so it's not front-loaded with dialogue. All the dialogue will happen at the end. And we're doing a little collaboration thing. Johnny Snowball built me a map, which is a really fantastic map that's going to take a long time to import because he used a lot of objects. But that's how Johnny builds. It's very different from me. I'm a very economical map builder. Apart from a few things where I occasionally get close to the object limit.
I was going to say, it seems more and more that I keep hitting the object limit.
Maybe.
It just occurred to me that there's one mission I've done that my recent mission that I published did not even come close to object limits. This is, of course, because of the fact that one of the sets that I did is the set is a Klingon space station, and I'm using it as a Klingon space station. So I didn't actually redress the set rather heavily. In case you're wondering exactly what I did for that particular map, I took that map where you have those like special subspace giant exploding torpedoes that Bavat built way back in the Klingon War arc, and you actually used the room where he kept those stored as a meeting room between the player and a Klingon general, and the tables that the giant torpedoes were on. I decided to repurpose those as computer consoles. So you see a bunch of KDF people standing next to those, doing stuff on computers, which didn't actually take up much of the object limit at all.
I think actually the first time I got close to the object limit was pretty recently. It was with that Starbase 1 map that I built in the Hobus map that you were talking about earlier.
The first time I hit the object limit on a mission was when I built a full Starbase interior for that mission I did called the Beta Rana incident, which I really, really need to fix so that it works again. I never actually got around to doing that. It's the one that got broken when they changed the size of the empty space in one map, and then
yes.
all of a sudden, you know.
What about you, Dragoon? What was your first run-in with the object limit? Oops, maybe we lost Dragoon.
Oh, sorry. I had inadvertently put my
You're
mute
back.
on. I hit my first big object limit with that large interior I made for the inside of the Eidolon array.
Yeah. Well, it's something every Foundry author runs across.
Yeah, but I'm
Every
doing
now
more maps as custom, so it means I've been hitting it more frequently.
Yep. All right. Let's see. I have a quick mission review. In the time we have left, I played through SirBoulevard's latest mission for the Iconian War anthology, and I think his last for that one. He's going back to his regular projects. It's called Common Ground, and it's a nice mission, but surprisingly short. It starts off with it's actually a sequel to several different missions between him and P. Sutherland. So he includes the new race that P. Sutherland has made all his missions around, the Askar, and what he does at first is have a nice recap of everything that's gone on in those missions if you need it, which I did because I haven't played all of them. It does include the Rise of Mulrahan that we did a live play of not too long ago in the backstory. But as you get to the present, you're sitting down with the Askar, the Tholians, the Klingons, the Romulans, and the Cardassians, and I may have left one out, for a peace conference, which is nice. It's a Star Trek thing to have happen, a peace conference, and you have a lot of running around and talking to people, and it's very interesting to get all of the different perspectives. Basically, it's a conference to set up an alliance against the Iconians. And there's, because of this diplomatic stuff, there's got to be a lot of give and take, and you got to figure out what everybody wants. And by the time you sit down to the conference itself, you have a good idea of why everybody's there and what everybody wants, except for the Askar, who are being very belligerent and are obviously hiding something. Now, I won't spoil it beyond that, but the map design is really nice.
That sounds like a normal day for the Askar.
It does, but probably even more so than usual. More belligerent than we saw in the episode that we played, Rise of Mulrahan. So obviously, there's a reason for that, and that results in an Iconian attack. So there is a little bit of conflict. There's really not much, and I was expecting a lot more because I remembered his Catastrophe at Kate, which Greendragoon also played, and can attest that there's a lot of combat in that one.
Yes, it totally has a lot of combat.
So you muted yourself again, didn't you?
Well, I tried when I inadvertently breathe over you or something.
So let's see. The map design was very good. He had a very neat diplomatic center, which had great use of windows. I mean, I can't express my thanks to Taco enough for making actual windows for us, and those glass panes, because it just opens up so much stuff we can do with buildings and putting backgrounds outside of windows and just making things feel more open and part of a larger world. And SirBoulevard makes just fabulous use of that. And he uses a lot of characters from previous missions, and so there's a lot of history there. And he sets up front the missions that you might want to play before this one, if you're interested. And my only real complaint about the mission is that it doesn't feel like it has any resolution. You don't. It feels like it sets up a big conflict with the Askar, and then you never have that conflict. Now, I can only assume that he's going to have a follow-up mission to this, one that involves the Askar and not the Iconian, so it'll probably be outside of the scope of the war anthology. But it felt a little disappointing that it wasn't in this episode, because I felt like there was room for it. It only took me, I think it took me less than half an hour to play. And I was left wanting more, and sometimes that's a good thing, but I think in this case he might have been better served having some kind of resolution in that mission, so it would feel a little bit more self-contained. And that may fly right into the next thing that Dragoon wanted to talk about.
Oh, we actually going to get to my subject?
I think we can spare the time.
Okay.
It'll be our last thing for the night.
So there is something I kind of wanted to talk about, and it's something we actually talked about way back at the very beginning of when we started out. But we really haven't covered it since, and thought since we are a video podcast now, I can actually can make up a very nice graphic to illustrate. So what I'm talking about is dramatic arc, or the idea of the flow of a story. Now this is a concept that's like been around since times, but it's also something that still holds true to this day, and just about every work of fiction, barring a few exceptions, tends to follow. And this is also something that, I mean, as Foundry authors, we kind of come from all walks of life, so it's something that we may not all be aware of. But anyway, so pull it up here. So this is what's known as the dramatic arc, and you'll see various variations on how it's illustrated. And I kind of tried to come up with one that kind of hits all the points. So the way a story typically starts out, life is normal, and everything changes when you at first hit the inciting incident. And this is kind of what causes the story to change directions on in the course that will ultimately lead it. This is usually a point of some kind of a drama. There's something. It can often be like a tragic event, or a something unexpected happens, and so this kind of changes the course and kind of sets the hero on their journey. And then you go through and you get various plot points, which will be kind of cause peaks and valleys as the tension in the story slowly rises. And this whole area is often called the rising action. So eventually, at some point, after you've kind of built your way up to it, you'll reach what's called the climax, and this is the turning point of the story. This is where the player realizes or gets the information they need to ultimately resolve the conflict, or everything is laid out, or basically the peak where the tension is at its highest. After that, you kind of move into the falling action, and this is a bit of a misnomer because it seems like the final battle would be back at the climax. But what happens is once the character has kind of made their turning point, there's a kind of a bit of a release of pressure as it moves into the final confrontation. Know what that needs to be done, and this is where the final the actual resolution is carried out. Everything is solved, and then after that you move into the it's called the denouement, or the resolution, and everything, all the plot threads are resolved, and the situation either kind of returns to normal, or if you're in the case of trying to do a cliffhanger, you kind of have things stop just after the final or falling action, and kind of leave it there.
if you want to say like an example, I'd use say like first contact. Say the inciting incident. Rather than the Borg attack itself, I would say the inciting incident is the time travel, where we go back in time, because that sets our hero Picard on the path to the rest of the story. A Borg attack is almost at this point normal.
And
it's no big deal. We've seen it before, but then the time travel is like, oh, hey, wait a minute. Now we're going in an interesting direction.
Yeah, and that kind of it sets the tone for the whole story. Mm-hmm. That's kind of one of the key things about an inciting incident.
Absolutely. And then obviously there's various plot points along the way, all finishing with the confrontation with the Borg Queen, and really I would say that the climax itself, if you want to boil it down to one point, is where Data fires the torpedoes at the Phoenix, and has he or has he not betrayed everyone?
I don't think so. I actually would say that the climax is actually Picard's rant with Lily, where he kind of finally realizes his own aggression and why he's doing what he's doing. Because after that point, it's... Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Because the climax isn't the resolution, I suppose.
Well, one thing that I just thought of here is that one of the observations I made about the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie is that they kind of played around with this concept, and they did it so that they kind of go through the entire sequence twice. About the middle of the movie, they more or less kind of like it's like the first half of the movie was nothing but set up to start the action for the second half of the movie.
There are various different structures you can take. I mean, this isn't the only one that Dragoon has up on the screen. In fact, there's a very good YouTube video with Kurt Vonnegut, the famous author, explaining several different story methods and story structures that it is very hilarious, actually, that I encourage everyone to find out. I'll get Dragoon the link to put in our show notes. But I think actually you're right. I think that is a good place to put the climax, because that's when he kind of realizes what it's going to take to resolve the situation.
Yeah, because I mean,
and then you get down to the final suspense, as it's on your chart here, and that's where the confrontation with the Borg Queen happens.
Yeah, and I mean, after that point where Picard comes to terms with his feelings about the Borg, you'll notice that there's a much more calm. He takes a much more calm demeanor. Like he personally has kind of come to a resolution of sorts.
Yeah. Well, see, prior to that, there's this moment where he literally yells out, "The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther."
Yeah, and that's the peak. But I mean,
the peak of tension. Yeah.
I would make the argument, though, that just about, or almost every episode of Star Trek can be formed into this. You have the inciting incident where the crisis is revealed, or is shown. You have the plot points as they discover different aspects of or different effects of this crisis. You get to the climax where they figure out what it is and what they need to do to solve it. And then you have the final suspense where they actually execute their plan to save the ship or destroy the anomaly or whatever it is they're doing. And then a resolution at the end to kind of wrap up any loose threads.
Actually, I'll tell you the quintessential example of this kind of story structure is the show House. Because every episode, somebody comes in who's sick, and that's the inciting incident. The plot points are each of the wrong diagnosis they have. Okay, it's not the first disease we thought it was, not the second disease, it's not the third disease. And then finally there's this point where House makes some kind of brilliant random deduction of, oh, now I get it. It's this one. And then they try that and cure them.
I remember a few episodes of that, and one of the things they sometimes tossed in there was that something that someone told him at the beginning of the episode turned out to be wrong, and that's why
there's always
he
some lie.
wasn't able to figure out. Like the one person who actually had two different diseases, and that was actually what was making the symptoms confusing. Is that, and he realizes later on in it, it's like, oh wait, this is a symptom of that disease, this is a symptom of that disease, and then he sorts the symptoms into two different categories instead of trying to match all of them to a single disease.
Pax brings up a good point. He says for his big 5-part series, Ghosts of War, he essentially uses this kind of structure for each part, or each of the high points here is one part of the story, and that's a good way to structure a big series, is to keep that each individual one is one of these contained, and then as you zoom out, the whole series is structured like this.
Well, that's
you keep the rising action with some little peaks here, all the way moving up to the big peak in probably the last part.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting thing, is that frequently long-form storytelling will follow this on the macro scale as well as the micro scale. So you have individual episodes that are following this arc within their own little chunk, but then you will have the overall arc of the series also following something similar. So I'm thinking a good example is Deep Space Nine. So if the inciting incident is the setup discovery of the wormhole, you have plot points, which are points at which, like the discovery of the Dominion, the rising of the hostilities with the changeling infiltrations, the start of the war. The turning point is during the war, where they start to turn the tide, and Cisco kind of comes to terms with his role as emissary. And then you have the falling action, which is the final assault on Cardassia, and then the a very, I guess for the arc of the in the space of the show, a very quick resolution where they wrap things up and have the peace treaty signed.
Now, obviously, you don't have to follow this method. I'm sure there are great works out there that have not followed this particular structure. Not sure I can think of one off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, like I said, especially for new authors who are really looking to try and get the pacing of their missions down, this is a really cool tool.
If you think of it in terms of Foundry, you could say, each one of these little peaks that we have here, obviously you can't see this, but I'm pointing at the screen at these little peaks.
The plot points.
Yeah, I'm talking with my hands. The plot points, each of those could be, an action scene, and in between the where it goes down, those could be dialogue scenes, and each one of these little peaks could be one map, or you could look at it like any of those kinds of ways.
Well, something else I kind of want. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
I did kind of follow that in Oath of Patrol, because you get to Oath, that's the thing that starts off everything. Then you get to the ground map. That's where things start to escalate, and then when you get inside the Borg thing, that's when things get weird. I'm not going to explain what happens after.
And weird is not bad.
Weird yeah, but by the way, last I checked, that mission still had 0 plays. It's annoying.
Well, we'll have to get out and help you with that.
One thing I did want to point out, and I kind of tried to illustrate this in the graph, is that you'll see that it's not. I chose not to make it like smooth and like a steady rise, and that's the idea of that it's good to try and build and relieve tension. So obviously it's slowly building over the course of the arc, but at the same time there are peaks and valleys as you're moving along. The idea is that you don't want to keep the tension like on it constant, because it's going to wear out the player. Plus, if as they'll kind of start to acclimate it to it, you'll either acclimate or wear out. But if you
also if the action doesn't rise and fall, it makes the story feel forced and unnatural.
Yeah, but I mean, if you rise and fall, then it allows the player to kind of relax for a sec, and then you bring in the next hit, and it makes the hit much more impactful if they're coming off of a valley versus if they're just on a curve up or just on a slope. So
I always follow the, or I don't always follow it, but I follow the advice that I've heard Joss Whedon say, which is, make it dark, make it gritty, make it hard, and then for God's sake, tell a joke.
Yeah, and
because you need those tension
relievers. That's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always felt
you need those quiet moments, like in Serenity. Speaking of Joss Whedon, you have this big space battle and the ship crashes on the ground, and then you have this quiet moment, and then wham, he hits you with something else. But it wouldn't work without that quiet moment.
Yeah, I mean, really, I always kind of see. It doesn't seem too complicated, and we see it so much in media, like all forms of storytelling media, that we almost don't think about it. But in a way, it's kind of like the key to really getting your foot on into storytelling.
It's definitely for sure a good place to start.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're probably about out of time here. We started a little bit late, but we're ending right about where we should, I think. So I just want to end with one thing. Star Trek Las Vegas next year. We got a lot of Foundry authors going. I'm going. I know Dragoon is going. Zorbane is going. And Bazag is going to be there. Woody Valley is going to be there. So, anybody who's interested, start planning now. Especially with hotel rooms, because they're going to fill up.
Yeah, I've noticed that they've already put up the group rates for Star Trek Las Vegas. Kind of got to dig into their website a little bit, but I think if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link to their very preliminary 2015 stuff.
It's what is it? August 3rd through the 7th next year, or something close to that. So check that out. Pax Federatic is going. Awesome. We're going to have a big presence there.
I can't think of a way to explain just how much I would love to go.
You have a year to save up.
I don't know.
I know. It can be a tough thing, and I decided not to go this year so I could save up for next year, and then I was, seeing everything that people were posting last week, and I was like, oh God, I wish I was there.
I will say I ended up having I have automatic deductions from my my bank account set up just so I have the money set aside to go to Star Trek Las Vegas.
That is exactly what I've been doing.
In case you guys don't already stock Taco Fangs on Flickr, he already put up his collection of pictures for.
Oh, and he takes hundreds upon hundreds, like I do. I think I came back with 500 pictures last year. So, obviously that's a year away, but get planning now if you have an interest, and if you do, we will see you there. But for now, Dragoon, throw up our contact info.
All right. If you want to reach us by email, you can reach us at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogon can be reached at Drogon1701. Mark here can be reached at Markhawkman, and I can be reached at Greendragoon.
All right. Well, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.